All right, welcome back to Faith Family United Church of Christ. This is our Bible study, studies in Luke. We are in chapter 11, starting at verse 38. That's a 6, or 3. 33. I'm sorry. The light of the body. You have the mic on? Okay, I just checking. Why? It doesn't have to be so professional. We're relaxed. This is a Bible study. Okay, so the light of the body. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it in a cellar, but on the lampstand, so that those who enter may see the light. Your eye is the lamp of your body. If your eye is healthy, your whole body is full of light. But if it is not healthy, your body is full of darkness. Therefore, consider whether the light in you is not darkness. If then your whole body is full of light, with no part of it in darkness, it will be as full of light as when the lamp gives you light with its rays. Wow.
That's very prolific.
It's kind of cryptic though, isn't it? It sounds cryptic. At least to me, it sounds cryptic. And I think one of the things that we need to understand is about this time, there's a movement in the Jewish community, and people are being pulled back towards their religion, their religious base. And there's still people that are politically motivated, and there are people that are using religion for positions of power. But there's this grassroots movement, how we say today, and they want to get back to that. And one of the things that they talk about is this lightness and darkness. It's a big theme. And if you go into and you read some of the Dead Sea Scrolls, or the manuscripts that come out of the Hagragi, I couldn't say that word. Anyway, in other words, they were caves. They put the scrolls in jars and then stored them in caves, and then they would go get them and they would do whatever. But these are writings that were around the same time, and if you go see their writings, there's a lot of this darkness and light, good and evil. And this idea that people had good and evil in them, but which one was prevail, and you can see how this is right there with that idea. So, what do you think?
I think it is also about your disposition in the world, because this says, if you live your life wide-eyed in wonder and belief, your body fills with light. If you live squinty-eyed in greed and distrust, your body is a musty cellar.
Interesting. Musty cellar.
So I think it has a lot to do with how you choose to live your life.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think about the words that are used? What are some of the key words in this little saying here? Light.
Darkness.
Darkness, light, darkness, lamp. Right? And lamp and your body, and being healthy, your eyes. Go ahead.
Didn't you say that only the scholars, the priests and the rabbis were the educated?
Yes.
The others didn't know a thing, dumb as a doornail.
Well, they got all their information from them.
Yeah, but it seems to me whoever wrote this is part of a small elite, brilliant concepts. This is not a layman's concept at all.
No.
This is something only the scholars who have, beyond 160 IQ.
But that's the difference, though. It wasn't the scholars that were understanding this. It wasn't the rabbis or the religious leaders. it was the common people that were grasping the meaning behind this.
And the leaders were not.
No, because they had their scholarly stuff, and they were stuck in their ways.
So the last line, 36 in my translation says, keep your life as well lighted as your best lighted room. So it's also about, you know, people say, oh, you manifest things. Well, we all know how negativity is corrosive and contagious, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you live your life surrounded by that, that's who you become. But if you live your life surrounded by light, and you always think there's new things to learn, there's new things to see, the world is kind, the world is love, then if you live your life like that, that's what you're going to manifest.
So put that into today's ideas and terminology. I mean, I know what I'm thinking.
Well, if you're open and you're affirming of people and welcoming to all, and you're living your life trusting that there's love left in the world, and through diversity and through all these things, like we try to live our lives, that's what Jesus is saying here. Be like that. Don't be closed, distrustful, negative. Don't be, don't look inward, excluding people and excluding thoughts. And and if you trust somebody you shouldn't trust, that's on them, not on you. And I think we've got to get over this idea that we have to be careful about people and letting them in, and you know what I'm saying, not us in particular, but the world itself and Christianity as a whole, because Christianity has become so insular. They only hang out with people they go to church with. They send their kids to private schools. They live in communities with other people that believe careful. Like them.
Careful, you're stepping on my
well,
sermon.
I'm just saying
you're stepping on my sermon here in a little
that's
bit.
What this is giving. This is telling you. This is telling you, live your life trusting and open and in love, and that's where we're missing the mark.
Okay. Let me ask this, and let's put it in perspective of Jesus. Let me back up for a second. Let me say one more thing about what you just said. In our house, we watch certain news, right? We try to get news that is not necessarily leaning one way or the other. So we look for news that is kind of in the middle.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, it's hard. But so what we end up doing is we'll watch a news program that's leaning to the left a little bit, and then they'll have their information, and then we'll turn over to another news station that is not really news, but anyway, and see what they're saying. And what she was saying was, the one news station that is not really a news station is all about fearfulness and not trusting and all negativity and all this stuff. You can't trust, you can't.
But when you see it on your cell phone scrolling down, don't you ever, the light bulb goes in my head, I'd say, you're a damn liar.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm not that stupid.
And that's you, like Cindy was saying, that's you being open to realizing that. But just think about that. If you just chose that information center, and that's all you chose, and you didn't look at anything else, what would your life be like? So, anyway, so the what I wanted to do here real quick is let's look at this in the idea of Jesus and us. So, who do you see as Jesus in this? In this saying, who is Jesus?
The light.
The light. Okay, and that's important because I think some people get this kind of confused. So if Jesus is the light, and that's the light coming into us, that's the Jesus creed, love your God, love your neighbor, that kind of thing. If we're filling ourselves with that light, and then what are we?
A lamp.
We are the lamps. We're filling ourselves and we're letting that shine. And I think that's a good point here. And it went along with what you said, Cindy. If we're filling ourselves with goodness and light and everything, then that's what we will shine with. And if we fill ourselves with negativity and all that, then, I mean, it's not shining, but
I've
that's
been to a
what,
group and somebody walks in with a downer and all of us, there's bring the group down to their
Mhm.
level because they're so negative on stuff.
Yep.
Mhm.
Somebody else comes in all joyful and it suddenly brightens the room.
Right.
We're having fun, and
we say that, don't we?
Yeah.
Oh, when they come into the room, it's just, they
Exactly.
just brighten the room with their smile or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And I have to commend your husband. I think he's one of those.
Oh, yeah.
When he comes into a room,
Yeah.
he's just always perky,
Yeah.
and I love it. So, okay. So, any other questions or comments about this?
How can the leaders be so dumb?
Power.
Power. They want to keep. They want to keep their power. Isn't that the truth? When you get the power, you don't want to relinquish the power. So you have to get stubborn and no change. Because if you change, you might lose your power, right?
Yep.
Okay, so the next one. Cindy, read us the next one, would you please?
How far down? Through
Starting
41?
at 37 and going to the end. 30 or 54.
Oh, okay. It says, when he finished the talk, a Pharisee asked him to dinner. He entered his house and sat right down at the table. The Pharisee was shocked and somewhat offended when he saw that Jesus didn't wash up before the meal. The master said to him, I know you Pharisees buff the surface of your cups and plates so they sparkle in the sun, but I also know your insides are maggoty with greed and secret evil. Stupid Pharisees, didn't the one who made the outside also make the inside? Turn both your pockets and your hearts inside out and give generously to the poor, when your lives will be clean, not just your dishes and your hands. I've had it with you, you hopeless Pharisees. You're frauds. You keep meticulous accounting books, tithing on every nickel and dime you get, but manage to find loopholes for getting around basic matters of justice and God's love. Careful bookkeeping is commendable, but the basics are required. You're hopeless, you Pharisees. You love sitting at the head of the table at church dinners, love preening yourselves in the radiance of public flattery. You're just like unmarked graves. People walk over the nice, grassy surface, never suspecting the rot and corruption that are 6 feet under. One of the religious scholars spoke up, Teacher, do you realize that in saying this, you're insulting us? And he said, yes, and I can even be more explicit. You're hopeless, you religious scholars. You load people down with rules and regulations, nearly breaking their backs, but never lift a finger to help. You're hopeless. You build tombs for the prophets your ancestors killed. The tombs you build are monuments to your murdering ancestors, more than to the murdered prophets. That account of God's wisdom saying, I will send them prophets and apostles, but they killed them and ran them off. What it means is that every drop of religious blood ever spilled from the time earth began until now, from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who was struck down between the altar and the sanctuary, is on your heads. Yes, it is on the bill of this generation that this generation will pay. You're hopeless, you religious scholars. You took the keys of knowledge, but instead of unlocking doors, you locked them. You won't go in yourself, and you won't let anyone else in either. As soon as Jesus left the table, the religious scholars and Pharisees went into a rage. They went over and over everything he said, plotting how they could trap him into something from his own mouth.
Did you catch that? That was like what you were saying there, Wesley. He condemned them, and he's saying that basically what you're doing is you're keeping the truth from the people because you want to stay in power. And then that's exactly what they did. If we educate these people, or he educates these people, then they're going to know that we're kind of frauds and we're just trying to keep power here. So that's interesting. I want to go all the way back to the very beginning, where it says he didn't wash his hands before dinner. Do you know where in the Bible that it says you have to wash your hands before dinner?
Well, the Jews have a custom of washing their hands
That's
3
not what I
times. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody does. It's not in there.
I never
There-
saw
in
But just good hygiene.
well, it's good hygiene, but it's not a law in the
Okay,
Testament.
got it.
But yet they require you to do that.
But it's to be expected.
And here's what the thought is. In Exodus 30, 17 through 21, the priests and the Levites must wash their hands and their feet before they enter the tabernacle. Okay, that was back when they were still moving around and they had the tabernacle, not the temple. So they would have to wash their hands and their feet before they could enter. And that's the priests and the Levites. So you can see this then turns into an idea of washing before you eat, because God provides, right, the meal. So you have to wash your hands before you eat. But it's not a law. And yet they treat it as a law. As you can see here, they were surprised that he didn't do this. And how dare he break the tradition that we had started. And this is a problem. And this is what Jesus came to change. Making all these rules on people and getting them to do the things that you want them to do instead of do what is needed from God. And Jesus breaks it down into the two greatest commandments, you know. And this is what what I always talk about is you got the law, which is here, and then you don't want to break that law, so you put a fence around it or a hedge around it, so you can't get to the law because the hedge is there, the fence is there, and then you put another fence around that, so you don't even come close to doing that. So the law was for the Levites and the priests to wash before they went into the temple. Well, let's just be safe and let's put another law around that, or our rule that we're just going to wash our hands before we go to any table. And but let's put one around that too, and that's we must wash our hands 3 times a day. That way, if you we eat 3 meals a day, and then let's put another, and you just build up these man-made rules that you forget what's important. And the importance was being, showing yourself clean before God. And that's what I always think of when I think of something like this. And Jesus says, you're keeping the people from doing what is right there, the idea that keeping yourself clean in front of God. Mm-hmm. Instead, you make these rules and they try to do those rules and they forget about what the main purpose was. I think that's the main thing here. And it's that, for you load people with burdens hard to bear. And I always think, what's the scripture say? Come to me, all who are weary, for my burden is light. Or my
yoke is easy, my burden is light.
Yeah. So when you come to Jesus, he wants to get to the main point: love God, love your neighbor, and no rules other than that. I mean, there are rules, but if you follow those, then that's easy. 2 rules. So anyway,
keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Yep, that's KISS. I was in the Army. Keep it simple, stupid.
I think it's important to point out here too that Jesus never spoke to people like this only to these religious scholars. Like, he never condemned people.
I say that all the time.
I think it's important to realize that he wasn't necessarily speaking to the individuals, but to the system.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And that's something that, as the church has become more and more corrupt and more lost sight of their mission, that's kind of like, now, like when we speak out about church, we're not speaking out about individuals. Mm-hmm. We're speaking out about the system.
The system that they set up like this.
Mm-hmm.
Keep people from the heart of worship.
Right. And the power and the...
Yeah, and I've always pointed that out too to people, that there's only a couple times when Jesus rebukes someone that wasn't a religious leader or a political leader, and that's when he told Peter to get behind me. And I can't think of any. Oh, and when he it wasn't really an admonishment, but he kind of corrected when they say, "Can we sit on your right hand, Nathaniel? You know, can one of us sit on your right hand and the other on your left hand?" And he's like, "That's not for me to give." And he was pointing out to them that they're asking for something that is beyond what their comprehension is. So, but he is always going after the religious leaders, and that's the people, like you said, Cindy, the people that want to hold on to their power and keep the system, because the system is what keeps me in my power. And that's unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with today in our country. We got a lot of people that want to hold on to their power, and they're trying to use the system against the people and hold them in control.
I think it's important that we remember that a day of reckoning is coming for their people. It may not be in our lifetime, or may be, who knows. But we need to be here ready to receive them with open arms when they do.
Yeah, when
And we need to not make those attacks personal.
exactly. See, and you see that, and you see people that are fooled, right? They live in that darkness because that's what their eyes are being filled with, and so they live in that darkness. And one day, you know, that's not going to be there anymore, and they're going to open their eyes and they're going to see. And it might be when they hit that rock bottom.
And I don't mean a day of reckoning as in something bad is going to happen to them, but a day of revelance.
Yeah.
And we've been there. We know what that feels like. It's a lonely place. And so it's nice to come to some place like this where people welcome you. And we need to be that sanctuary for people like that, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen maybe sooner than later, but that's what we need to really prepare for, because I think it's coming.
And I picture this caravan of refugees that are, you know, and the philosophical sense of it. All these refugees that realize that they've
been deserted. They've been deserted by what they
their
thought.
Christian nationalism, they've just been used by people that they thought were leaders in the Christian movement, but they're not. They're just using the people, and they're going to open their eyes and they're going to see this, and they're going to be all these refugees, and where do they go? Well, that's when we need to welcome them in.
And I'll say something too. There's not a person that has come to this church since I've been here that hasn't been hurt by religious trauma, or been hurt by the church, or isn't here because of something that's happened religiously to them. And they're not looking for us out of, I mean, we just need to be honest with ourselves. People aren't looking for a church like us when they're in a good place.
Yeah, no.
I mean, honestly. And so that's something that today we're going to talk about our mission. That's something we need to embrace and figure out how to reach those people, because coming here can really heal you.
I think so.
And so I think and it may just be that people come one time and they realize for themselves, I deserve better. And they may go somewhere else and take that message back. That's okay too. But that's really what we need to kind of realize from this, is that we need to be that light of love. And it was a good reminder today, because sometimes we get so bogged down in things that are frustrating about the world that we forget that maybe that's our real mission here, is to be the light.
Be a light.
I mean, we know that.
Be a landing spot for people that are lost, and a safe spot.
And
that they
seeking.
can come, and they can do their thinking and see the light of love and compassion.
In my lifetime, when I was in Ohio, I noticed all the great religious leaders. They had beautiful mansions. They took off to West Palm Beach to retire. I mean, the cars, the jets. Jets were not titled to the church. It was titled their name, you know what I mean? And every last one of them, a few years later, the wife puts the cat out of the bag and says he's a hypocrite.
Yeah.
You know, what he does on the weekends, the company he keeps, where he goes. And they're all lying through their back teeth on Sunday morning with their hand out. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's that idea of being in a position of power. And what do they say? Power corrupts. And ultimate power, not ultimate power. What's the word?
Absolute.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't help themselves.
No. And that's what Cindy was saying. That's that place of comfort. Once you get in that place of comfort and you realize, I don't have to do anything. Just as long as everything stays the same, I'm good.
And all the people are like little sheep being sheared.
Meanwhile, people all around you are suffering and hurting, but you're in that little comfort spot. And anyway, I think we got off a little bit off there, but I think it's interesting. What do you think about this? This will be our last question. What do you think about this? It will be charged against this generation. And he's talking about all of the prophets throughout the years that have been killed, but it's going to be charged to this generation. Does that mean that God punishes this generation for past sins? Or like they say, your sins will visit your sons for 3 generations. What do you think that means?
I think it means exactly what you said. You reap what you sow. So if you sow bad things come. And we're seeing that in America right now with racial inequity. Mm-hmm. In the 60s, they tried to they thought they solved the situation of civil rights, but they didn't solve it. And so now, 4 or 5 generations later, it's brewing, and it's the same sort of thing. So
but
it's
we
like
were part of that.
No, but
why?
This generation is paying because that generation didn't handle it the way it should have been handled.
Exactly.
So we need to do something about it.
Yeah, we need to do something about it now.
Yeah.
Because
we don't want that on
the next generation. But so our mistakes now aren't just going to affect us in our later years. Our mistakes are is going to affect generations from now.
And it's not just, think about all the things that you could apply that to. The environment. Mm-hmm. If you remember, like in the 30s and 40s, they used to just, factories just dump their water into the water streams. And where we lived in Tennessee, they had all these closed down chemical plants, and you can never build there because the ground is so horribly polluted. And so it's not just, it's all the things that are downstream from that. And the coal mining industry powered America. We wouldn't be what we were without it. But then look at those areas where those coal miners were now. It's some of the worst places in America for poverty and drug use and birth defects and all these things. So it's not that those people have sinned in any way. It's that those
generations before had let them down.
Yeah.
And that's...
So let's not do that.
Yeah. And I was thinking, we look, you want to talk about the racial thing, we look at the way people, a couple generations, I look at my father and how he was raised as a child, and the things that it was perfectly okay for him to say, and we're like, you can't say that. You don't say those things now.
They joked about it.
And so it's like, but they didn't see it back then, and that was their fault. And today we're having to fight in our generation to get that corrected. And you remember when you were talking, when Cindy and I were growing up, a little bit younger than you, Joe. I'm sorry, but you remember it too. Remember the Indian, the Native American that would stand alongside the road because people would throw their trash out their cars with a teardrop coming on his eyes because people had thrown trash on the side of the road. Remember that commercial, mm-hmm. Cindy? And it was to tell people to, and it's like, why would you have to do that? It's what kind of mentality do you have that you think it's all right to just throw your trash out the door? But yet, that was that generation. And what happens? Our generation is trying to well, and the younger generation.
Enlighten them.
Exactly.
Right.
And yet the older people and the people that they want to, they say, oh, global warming isn't a thing. It's just natural. No, it's not. We have done something. And when I say we take responsibility for the earlier generations because we now have to fix it. So I just wanted to touch on that, the idea that this generation is paying for the other generation's faults. And when we think about it, we really need to work hard to get it right now, because even though we are trying, we're still going to do things wrong. And generations from now are going to pay for our mistakes. So, we good?
Yes.
All right. So, thank you again. Oh, a quick caveat. We will have Bible study next week, but we will be off for 2 weeks after that. Is that right? Next week? No, next 2 weeks, and then the last 2 weeks.
Okay, 2 weeks we're going to have it.
Yeah, and then the last 2 weeks of this month we will not have Bible study.